No worries.
This meeting is being recorded.
There we go. I think we're recording now, Tony. Yeah. So direct mail.
Yeah.
So you've done little bits and pieces so far.
Yeah, I've been on it pretty much every day, seeing what's what. I always check Rightmove anyway, just to keep updated with the market. So I've been prospecting every single day, and if the house is within 10 minutes drive, I'll try and just do a route so I can just drop off quite a few letters. But if it's anything beyond like 10-15 minutes, I'll just post it with a second class stamp.
Right. So what, like, talk me through what you're doing then. So I know when you messaged, you said in terms of the volume, you've done a couple of hundred. I think you said, is that right? Was it 200?
Yeah, I'd probably say I think I'm on to my fourth batch of second class stamps, and I buy 100 at a time. So I've probably done about 325, something like that.
Right. And what's the result been so far? Any conversations, valuations, instructions?
No, nil. I've not had any callbacks so far from it. So it's making me wonder, is it the content as such? So I got the eXp tips, but I did try and tweak it to make it more of my own, because I just felt it was a bit generic. So I just wanted to try and make it more of how I would actually speak. So I've done that, and I've still not had any results so far. I know it's just one of them being consistent with it, but it does make me also think, is the content, could that be changed? Could that be improved? So.
And where are you getting your data from? Have you got like Loop or Home Search or something like that, or are you?
Yeah, Loop Prospect, and I paid extra for that. So yeah, just got 3 kind of core postcodes really. So PR6, PR7, and BL6.
Man, I always forget how close to me you are. We probably could have had this conversation in Acosta.
Yeah, probably.
Mate, I'm
Yeah.
literally moving to PR4, so like over towards like obviously Ellswick, but
like
Kirkham and Charlotte. Yeah. So
Yeah,
mate, we'll have to meet up in a few weeks and have a beer or a coffee or something like that instead.
Yeah, of course.
It'd eradicate this shaky Zoom call anyway, wouldn't it? That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But no, mate. So like with direct mail, like I said when I sent you that quick message, and we could speak about this all day, mate. That's why. Like when people try and pick my brains about direct mail and WhatsApp, like it's easy to answer quick questions, but it's so difficult to like give proper answers and give context, because there's like so many different questions and ways you can take it, and things that you could be doing really well, or things where there's room for improvement. But mate, I guess the first thing that I'd say is that like people always, at least in my experience, they tend to cling on to a bias for the things that they've seen work before, but then anything that's new or anything they've not tried, and I include myself in this, mate. And for me, I'd never done direct mail before coming to eXp, so I kind of felt as though it was going to be a waste of time. It's like an old, outdated strategy. It belongs to the 90s, and I was reluctant to put too much money into it. And I think like you've been doing, I just went balls deep on social media and started paying loads of money to promote adverts. So I'm not saying that social media is not great, because it is. I'm not saying that paid adverts don't work, because they do. It's just that in my experience, it was a slow burner to get organic traffic in any sort of adequate volume from socials. And the sort of instant online valuation tools, which rightly or wrongly is what I was always pushing, was generating leads and generating cheap leads. But it was always leads from people who needed a long-term nurture. So people who are ready to convert 2 years from now. Whereas obviously you're like a month into the business. So like we need to get you in front of the hotter prospects who are going to convert quicker and hopefully be ready to put it on the market soon. So mate, like the direct mail, the way that it was explained to me, and I always kind of share this because this is what kind of made me reframe the way that I viewed it. I was chatting and someone said, oh, you should do direct mail. And I was a bit reluctant. And they said, well, you know, you've got to think about it, mate. If you see a for sale board or a property that's on the market with a competing agent, that is effectively the customer who's got their hand in the air saying, Ben or Tony, I've got a problem that you can fix. I've got a house that I need to sell. This agent's not sold it. Your service literally caters for that individual. So they're the hottest prospects in the market. And you always think, mate, I don't know, if me and you set up a business selling mobile phones and then we drove down the street and someone had a big sign in the garden saying, I need a new mobile phone, we'd go and speak to them. But people don't apply the same logic all the time when it comes to agency for whatever reason. So for me, mate, like this is, especially if budget's a consideration because you've not hit a completion yet because you're early stages, like albeit with my biases, but based on what's worked for me and based on what I've seen work for other people, I would personally recommend that you put shift resources outside of what you're doing now with the long-term nature stuff and go into your direct mail, because I genuinely think that's where you're going to get a quicker and a better return on the investment. So like when it comes down to where you're at the moment, so although you've sent a few hundred, mate, in the grand scheme of things, that's only a tiny amount of content to be sending. So I wouldn't necessarily expect you to be setting the world on fire and be beating people off with a shitty stick at this stage anyway, because it's early stages. So I don't think there's any like sort of like red alarm bells in terms of like, Jesus, I'm really missing a trick or something's definitely going wrong. But there's definitely like a few things to like sort of build into your strategy, I guess, like over the next few months, and getting this right, mate, will save you a load of money and allow you to sort of get the better conversions. Cool. So if you're not having a success, typically it comes down to either volume or frequency. So you're just not sending enough letters out, full stop. So because you're not getting the volume out there to enough people, you're not kind of putting your chips on enough numbers to increase the likelihood of your number coming in, if that makes sense. But with the market, the way that it is at the moment, it's difficult to control the volume, because obviously a lot of properties have been selling typically quite quick. Maybe we're coming out the end of that phase now, but there's not been an awful lot coming to the market anyway. So the opportunities, maybe you'd argue, are fewer than what they were if we was having this conversation a few years back. So then your option there is to make sure you're getting the right volume out, is to either expand slightly and take on more territories, or the sort of, I guess the thing to think about there is if you're spreading yourself too thin, it kind of dilutes it, or you just get ultra frequent and start hitting people a bit more frequently. I know that Adam's like a big fan of like bombarding, so he might write every week, or I've done every fortnight. I know that typically people do it every month, but sort of just upping the frequency and getting more letters out and creating more touch points can be a really good way to go. But the way that I look at it, mate, and there's always this like big debate about like, oh, well, what's the point on sending a letter out to someone who's just instructed, you know, like a welcome to market letter? Because if someone's just got on the market with another agent, they've just made the decision, they're very unlikely to convert, they're not going to respond to the letter. Is it worth the stamp and the paper posting it? And the reason why it is, mate, and I guess this kind of comes back to the whole frequency, is because every letter that you send is a touch point, like brings that customer closer to you. So whether they take action on it or not, whether they ring you or text you or email you or message you or follow you on social media or they don't, it's still put your name and your face and your message, and you've made an effort to bridge that gap. So even though they might not convert on the first, second, third or fourth letter, by the time you send the fifth letter out, the reason they are converting is because you put that groundwork in with letter 1 to 4. So I guess like I just explain that, mate, because a lot of people get disheartened that they've sent out so much content and nothing's happened yet, but you don't know what a time bomb that customer is and what small action you might take next where you get the result, but that result's been a compounded effect of every letter that you've sent, not just the one that happened to get the conversion, if that made sense.
I know what you mean. That's one thing I haven't been doing, to be fair. I just felt like with this market being so, everything that goes to the market, if it's priced right and correctly, it's selling straight away. So I just feel like sometimes, but I understand where you're going with the new instruction. At least you're making that first attempt. And then any other letter from there, it feels like you're not just contacting them because they're having a bad time. You're actually just there in general.
Yeah, 100%. And even if the market's like on fire and everything's selling, obviously, you know, as a new agent trying to get that second-hand listing, obviously that's not ideal. But in every market, there's always going to be properties that don't sell, or agents that miss the ball, they're not handling inquiries, they're not efficient. And, you know, those opportunities will still present themselves. And I don't know, mate, the way I look at it when it comes to the ROI is that, you know, although sending out letters, paying for envelopes, paying for printing and stamps, like the cost can mount up if you're sending out the right volume. But, you know, if you get one lead back that you manage to sell, it covers for 12 months worth of output.
Yeah, all that,
Do you know what I mean? So it's sometimes it's just kind of applying that bigger picture thinking and just being being patient and consistent, really. But I mean, outside of volume and outside of frequency, like you touched on there yourself, mate, like the content is obviously important. So obviously the content that's made when you come into eXp, it's been sort of made universally for 500 agents to plug into and be able to kind of use and send straight away. So like it works, and we've had success with it in the past, but I think you're right in what you say, Tony. There's definitely ways where you can change it and tweak it to make it more reflective of your business and your opinions and your approach. So, like, you know, we don't want to create 1,000 Adam Days or 1,000 Ben Moores or 1,000 Tony Dixons. Like, you know, the beauty of this model is that everyone's got the freedom to, you know, build a business in their mind's eye. So it's your take, your views, your narrative, your opinions, the way that you do it, your style. You know, you want to get that through the door so the customer's hearing it from you. That way, once you do get the call and they have a conversation, or you sit in a living room and you're sat having a custard cream and a cup of tea, at least like the message and what you're saying, the value that you're giving is consistent across your marketing, and that will help your conversions. So I definitely think, mate, depending on where you're at, it'd be worth you just blocking out a couple of days, like, and focusing on the content of that letter and the narrative that you're building. Like, if there's messages in there that you don't agree with, or things that you think is outdated, or things that you believe you could say or present better, or ways that you'd explain it, or words that you'd use, like, change it and just make it specific to you, mate. Because although it feels like a bit of a headache sitting at a computer and working on a document, like writing letters, when you could be out knocking on doors or whatever, if you're going to be doing your direct mail long term, then it's well worth just taking that step back to take 10 steps forward. Do you know what I mean? So make sure the content's dialed in. What's working really well for me, mate? So I've changed my content drastically over the last couple of months, and where I've got my conversions, I mix up short form content and long form content. So I've got a bit of a mix of the two. My long form content, mate, it tends to be based on a case study. So like at the minute, the sequence that you're using, like, don't quote me on this, but let's just say at week 4, there'll be a letter that goes out to the effect of, you've been on the market for a month. You know, the first 4 weeks tends to be quite busy in terms of generating activity. If you've not had any viewings or feedback yet, you know, a small quick fix that can go a long way is to change that front aspect photograph. It gives it the appearance of a new listing. So that might be the message of that letter. Whereas in mine, for example, if I was to send that, I'd share a story of, you know, Mrs. Smith was on the market for 6 months with an agent. Unfortunately, she'd not got the feedback she needed. She came to me in need of a more proactive approach. After 4 weeks on the market, unfortunately, the property still hadn't sold and we had very little interest. I was keen to make sure that we did all that we could to position the home properly. So in the case of Mrs. Smith, we did. So I'd still be getting the same message across, but I'd be using a case study to get the point across, rather than me saying, do this, or I'm great because I've achieved that. It just kind of, you know what I mean? It ties all that up in a story. But mate, the key point there, mate, is that if a customer is learning about your value or taking your advice and they're absorbing that through the medium of a story of a client that you've helped that's similar to them, it makes it more relatable, because they're like, oh, Mrs. Smith, like, I'm in that same position. Yeah, I've been on the market for 6 months before I came on with this agent. And the more like parallels the seller can draw between the person you've helped and their situation, the more they're going to see you as the sort of medicine for that pain, if that makes sense. So, mate, case studies have been a fucking game changer. Like, that's exactly what I've done.
To be fair, I remember being on the high street when I used to do my, I suppose even with Pebble Bricks, but I used to do, obviously, at your vendor contacts. I had, when I very first started, I had an instance where an house was on the market for 150. It was on the market for like 6 weeks, and he wanted to get 145 so we could move on. And I ended up doing offers over 140, and I got 2 people bidding on it, and I got the 145. And I just told that story to everybody. Every time I want to hit a reduction, I just tell that same story, just to get it 10 grand lower or whatever, just so I could basically get it back to the top of the listings to get more inquiries in, and then I'd sell it. So,
mate, 100%. And sort of sharing, like, that's a good example. So sharing that kind of case study of a factual event that's happened with a client that you've helped, it's just so more powerful than you saying, oh, offers over is great. So I know that you want 200, but I'm going to stick it on at 195. Like, sort of giving that case study, it adds more weight to the argument. But I do that at pretty much every milestone, mate. So, you know, if somebody, what's another trigger? Like, you know, say someone withdraws from the market, let's say. I won't send a letter out saying, hey, your property's come off the market. We're better than Tony Dixon Estates because we do this and we advertise there and we'll do this. And if you respond to this letter, we'll do a half price fee. Mate, it just doesn't work, or it very, very rarely works. So what I do in the case of withdrawal is I'd say, 6 months ago, I took a call from Mrs. Example, she'd been on the market with a well-known local independent agent for almost 18 months. In fact, on and off, she'd been on the market for 5 years. Over that 5-year period, she'd only had 2 viewings, she'd had no feedback, and she'd had no offers. Although she needed to move because the house was too big for her to maintain and it was becoming a real financial burden, she wanted to make sure she got the right price, and she'd all but given up on the chances of selling. I noticed it come off the market, so we had a conversation, and what we did was A, B, and C. The result was X, Y, and Z, and now this is where she's at. So again, it's just getting that point across that not all agents are the same. You might have been on the market for a long time. You might be disheartened. You might be upset. You might be frustrated. You might feel like you've wasted your time. You might even be angry, but not all agents are the same, and I'm going to show you why I'm different without me directly telling you that I'm different in the form of a case study. And mate, that stuff resonates. It really, really does resonate. But then woven in within that, mate, that not every single letter is a full verse and chapter. There'll be the magic letter, for example, which is, for anyone who's not eXp related who might be watching this, that's just the term that we give to a letter that gives us a good call to action in terms of calls. But it's very brief, very direct, very succinct. But I'll weave the magic letter in amongst the long form content. So normally I'll find I might send 2 or 3 long, well-written, well-considered letters, and then I might send the magic letter, and the magic letter will just be the spark from the match that lights the bomb that gets me the result. Do you know what I mean? But it's because of the other content that's come before it that's put me in a position where I've earned the right to get that conversion, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I've been doing that as well, to be fair. Like I probably do couple of letters, and then if it's not a response, I'll just bang it one of them magic letters just to then. So it's essentially the same as a comp slip, isn't it? So let's send them out, and then yeah.
It works, mate. I mean, I think, there's always like, I hear people bickering and arguing about like, oh, should your messaging be short, succinct, to the point, brief, like very simple, or should it be well considered, well thought out, And I just think there's like, people interpret things in different ways. People respond differently to different messages. But I just always think that, like, for me at least, I found long form content allows you to build a relationship at scale. The argument is that if it's too long, are people going to get bored and not read it? But this is where this is where like it's important to like consider the mindset of the person you're writing to, mate. Because like I said to Becca the other day, right? So Becca's my partner. We're moving house. At the minute, I'm in a property that it was my first time buying a house. I spent all my money to buy it. I've lived here for 5 or 6 years. I've been skint for most of that time. So for the last few years, I've not had the money to upgrade it, to maintain, like beautiful gardens, to decorate the walls every year. I've just not been in that position financially. So if at any point a landscape gardener put their flyer or sent their letter through my door and said, hi, we can do this, we can make your garden look beautiful. I wouldn't have even I would have seen it was a landscaper. I wouldn't have thought twice. I'd have squinched it up, put it straight in the bin. They would not have had any business. But now we're about to buy a new house. We're in a better position where we've got a couple of quid now. And all I'm thinking about is that, wow, this garden has got so much potential, but when we buy it, it's going to look really shit. So if I move into my new house and that same landscape gardener sends a letter through my door telling me about what they can do for the garden, what they suggest, what they've done, the results they've had, and it was a 2-page letter about landscape gardening, because I'm now in a position where I'm open-minded and I'm motivated to get a gardener, I'm going to read every single fucking word of that, because he's got the solution to a problem that I've now got. So that's where when it comes to people on the market, if you're writing to a property that's got a tenant in it, they see a 2-page letter about how you helped someone sell a house 3 years ago, it's going to go straight in. They're not asked because it's not the right audience. But if you're sending that letter about how you've helped sell someone who was in the same position as that client, and they're 3 months behind in the mortgage and desperately need to sell, you better believe, mate, they're going to read every word and hang on to every word and invest themselves in what you can do, because as much as you want the instruction, if they're motivated to move, they want to sell more than you want the business. So you're going to get that buy-in. And that's what helps you build a connection. So, mate, like there's always like, I think there's an argument for both sides, but for me, I found long form content has been working really well recently.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I think it's all about mindset of the buyer. Like you say, they were in that position there. I was always taught to see people either sell for mostly due to need circumstances or for greed, just because they want to try and get as much money out of it as possible. So like you say, someone's in a position where the valuation I went out to on Monday, they're looking to downsize because they're in a fairly good sized 3-bed house and there's only 2 of them. So looking to downsize. The other one before that, in a 2-bed, a couple with 2 kids, boy and a girl, so they can't have, obviously, mixed genders in the same room. So they want a 3-bed now. So it's exactly right.
It does, mate. And you know, that's I guess that's like the next stage, like when it comes to tailoring your content, mate, because depending on how into the weeds you want to get with your direct mail. And the reason why I've kind of really sort of like tried to think this through and kind of plan it out is because, well, one, my partner's a copywriter, so obviously she's a geek for sales copy anyway. That's what she does. But secondly, I wanted to try and get in with bigger properties with bigger fees. Like, so I'm a bit more niche in terms of who I send the letters to. But you know, I'll know, not every time, it's a bit of a stereotype, but more often than not, the client that I go for, because they own 7, 8, 900,000, a million, 1.5 million pound plus house, which might not sound a lot depending on where you are in the country, but where I am, that's a lot of money. And you know, stereotypically, they've been at a point where they've been there for a few years, you know, maybe a few decades. The kids have grown up, flown the nest. You know, the gardens are a bit of a headache. The back's gone. They can't get around like they used to. The stairs are becoming an issue. They love the property. It's just simply too big. It now makes sense to downsize. So what I'll do is when I'm writing to these people, the narrative or the case study that I'm reflecting back on will be about a client that I've helped who, you know, needed to downsize. They wanted a place big enough for the grandchildren to come and enjoy, but small enough to maintain. And when you're sort of given these case studies, more often than not, they're gonna identify so many parallels between that case study and them, which helps the conversions. If you're writing out to 2-bedroom terraced houses, then you know that's probably going to be a first-time buyer that's now selling for the first time, that's looking to move up to a 3-bed semi. So your case study in that case wouldn't be the retired couple that are downsizing. You'd be talking about how you helped, you know, Christine and Phil, you know, move up the property ladder and find their forever home just before the baby arrived. So because that's going to resonate more likely with the person who's selling that property. So it's just kind of thinking through who you want to target, what their mindset is, and how we can help position you as the best solution, mate. But if all else fails, mate, like I said at the top of the call, volume and frequency is your friend. The more touch points you can make with people, the more conversations you're going to have and the more instructions you're going to get.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think there's more inclined I'll want to speak to you as well. If you've been hammering them every 2 weeks with, like, there's one guy I've probably done about 4 letters to already, because since I've been on my own, he's reduced it, and it's been on the market for some time. And I just feel with some agents in the area, there's some really good agents where I am, where they'll do really good photography, they price the properties correctly, and obviously they put it all over in the right places. But there's some agents where I think they're stuck in 2012. Like, they're still doing terrible photography, all the timestamps, everything like that. It's just all grey skies. I think it could be so much better. And if I was a seller in this area, I wouldn't settle for any less. Mate, so I 100% target all them ones. The ones where I think, no, I'm sure that'll sell. I think maybe I won't prioritize them as much.
Well, mate, I'd say, like, I mean, first off, like, you know, you want to make sure whoever you're writing to is somebody that you want to work with, somebody that you feel that you can help. But even if, like sometimes, even if you look, and I've done this myself, mate, even if I look and think, do you know what, that price actually looks okay. The pictures are reasonable. They've made a bit of an effort with that. It's got a floor plan. Like, they've ticked all, like, the obvious boxes that somehow some estate agents just don't cover. But it's still not sold. Then it might not have sold because the communication's bad, because they're not responding to viewing inquiries soon enough. Because they're not being aggressive in chasing up for feedback, because they're getting lower offers and they feel scared about reporting it, and things are just slipping under the carpet. Like, you don't really know what's happening under the surface. So if they've not sold, I just always think it's either sold or it's not. If it's sold, then I'm not a fan of, like, oh, you've sold for too less, come with me and I'll get you more. That's just a dangerous, awful.
Oh, I've never done anything like that.
Don't even get me started, like, fuck that. But that to one side, if it's on the market, regardless of the politics and regardless of what's gone on, that agent has not done their job. I've got houses on the market now, mate, that I have not sold. I have not done my job. So that's fair game for someone to come and prospect. So I'd still put yourself out there, because you might just be the person that, you know, you might not do anything spectacular, You might not upgrade the marketing significantly. You might just build a better connection with the vendor because it's bespoke, because it's owner operated, because they're dealing with you. You might just get to that inquiry 10 minutes before the other agent. You might just get that viewing in the next day instead of waiting until next Monday. Do you know? You don't know what things you can change as an ambitious, hungry, new startup business that bigger corporates who are resting on the laurels might not be bridging so much. So I'd still say go for that client, mate. If it's not sold, it's not sold. It's an opportunity. Don't narrow your market.
It's fair game. If they're not selling it, then that's what I expect other agents to do the same. 5 houses on my books that I'm not sold. I'd expect them to be posting letters through my door. So like I said, it's fair game.
And this is the thing, mate. Like I've seen a couple of agents get narky about, such and such a body sent a letter to my house, but I just always think, like, for me now, for example, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I've got clients that are my clients, right? They might not have sold, and I'm frustrated it's not sold, and it's not ideal for them, and we've not got the outcome yet. But we're in contact all the time. We're changing WhatsApps and voice notes every other day. They know that I've got the back. They know that I'm trying all I can. They're very happy with the content that they've got. I've invested into socials. I've paid for upgrades. Like I've done everything that I can, and they know. So I know, at least for the time being, if someone prospected them, they're not going to get a conversion because my relationship with the client is such that although it's not sold, we're still strong. If I decide to stop responding to messages, if I start dodging calls, if I refuse to start giving updates, in 6 months' time, I'll lose that client. But that's on me. That's nothing to do with the agent that's prospected him. That's a fair opportunity. That's because I've let my standards slip. So I think you've only got something to fear about being prospected if it is that you know that you're doing shit wrong. Do you know what I mean? Then
exactly. If you're doing your job right, then you'll have no fears, will you? So, and I do feel like some agents in where I'm covering, I feel like they do focus too much on volume, so the customer service does begin to slack, and that's why I'm hoping for some calls back soon, because I've been doing, I mean, I don't know what your general time period is around you, but most agents generally do about 12 weeks where I am. So I'll probably start I do slow movers from 6 weeks, if I'm not already sent something about a reduction or whatever, a fall through. So I do 6 weeks, and I'll probably do, like I say, every 2 weeks from there, really.
But again, mate, going back to what I said before, Tony, like, don't start right, build a relationship with them straight away. Straight away, honestly, and again, mate, I'll just repeat what I said. So I'm sorry for being a broken record, but if something's worth saying, it can't be said enough. Like, they might not convert on week 1, they might not convert on month 1, they might not convert on month 2, month 3, month 4, month 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They might not, and that's fine. The point is that envelope coming through the door, your face being on there, your message, your attempt at bridging that gap, whether you see it or not, every time you send a letter through that door, think of it like, I don't know, it's probably an awful way to explain it. Like, I'll probably regret describing it like this, but just for the sake of a visual, imagine that, you got cowboys who've got those ropes and they put it around and they pull people towards it. If you imagine you got like a cowboy rope and you just get it around a vendor, every time you send a letter, that's you going. So even though you've sent that, welcome to market letter, here's what you can expect next, or here's a tip, here's some advice, here's a case study, here's a whatever it is you're going to send. Every single one of them is just until eventually you'll get to the one where they convert. Now, you might, with some sellers, you'll be really lucky, mate, that you'll just send a letter just as they've got off the phone to the agent, kicking off because the viewer's not showed up for the 5th time in a row, or because yet again they've not followed up with feedback, or because they've been ignoring the emails for 2 weeks, and they've literally just been having a discussion saying, Jesus Christ, we need to get a new estate agent, these guys are rubbish, and your letter just lands at the right time. Nothing more to it than luck. You've been super lucky, and you get the call and you get the instruction. Sometimes you've got to write to people 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times before they even consider picking up the phone. So, you just need to be consistent with it and start writing to them and start building a relationship at the earliest possible convenience, mate. If you wait a month and a half, then you might send a letter at week 6, and that is your day 1 now. That's when your relationship with that customer starts. Whereas if you'd done that on week 1, you might have already wrote to them a few times and you would have got the conversion at week 6. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the other thing, mate, is
in terms of the content you do for the new instruction, would you necessarily say? Oh, sorry, I think there was a bit of a lag.
It was, mate. Sorry, mate. New instructions was you asking about?
Yeah, so just asking what would you write in that first letter? So would you necessarily say I can register you details for similar properties coming on the market, etc., or suitable properties even?
You could do, so with mine, mate. I've got so with my words, I always try and make it as specific as I can for the person. So because I've been targeting recently anyway, I've been targeting the bigger houses. My title would be like, you've decided to market your unique home. What can you expect next? Now, either they've got a unique home, so they resonate with that straight away, or they aspire, they like to think they've got a unique home, so they want to identify with that straight away. But either way, just like with the case studies, the language and the words, it allows that customer to draw parallels. So in my welcome to market letter, I'd probably just say like it'd be an expectation on what can happen next. So in my case, I might make a few distinguishing differences between the marketing and the sale and the rate of progress on a unique home versus a mass market 2 up 2 down terrace that's got more of a demographic for purchase, if that makes sense. I might talk a little bit about what we typically expect, what we find, what I'd expect, and just basically it's completely value led. It's just all about giving. There's no call to action. There's no give me a call to register. There's no, I appreciate you've gone on the market with Tony, but I'm better and here's 5 reasons why. Nothing like that. It's just literally here's what you can expect next. Best of luck. Take care. Do you know what I mean? I'll also, as well in that letter, one thing that I do is I set the expectation that this isn't the last time they've heard from me. So like I'll always say like, I share updates and insights and advice with homeowners, both online and through letters. I hope you find the information useful over the coming weeks.
Yeah, that's good idea.
Just because then when they get a second letter, it's like you've kind of planted.
They would have kind of expecting, they're already waiting for it to come through.
And as well, if somebody really doesn't want to hear from me, like they might say, "Hi mate, you sent me a letter. Do me a favor, don't send me anymore." And that's fine. I'll save myself the 70p stamp.
Exactly. That's fair enough. That's a good idea. I'll start doing that. I'm just going to implement everything that you've said in this call and just try and just expand on it really.
2 things as well, mate, that are very, very important. And you might be doing this anyway, just because of the nature of how few you've been sending. But even if you start to scale up your output now, like 100%, I can't emphasize enough how important it is that you get a non-generic envelope and that you handwrite your letters.
I handwrite all my letters.
The addresses, obviously don't handwrite the whole freaking thing. But yeah, mate, that's and try and make sure as well. Like, I know this is only a small thing, and I never really considered this. So, with me, Tony, like my handwriting can be super neat if I take my time. But then when I'm over it, when I'm past it, like, I'm just like, you can't even read. Like, it looks horrible. But I went to evaluation. I've been to a few evaluations now, and they said like, "Oh, we got your." So I send off market letters as well as on market, just so I can get the right volume out. And the lady said, at first I thought it was a birthday card because it was a birthday like a couple of weeks before or whatever, and because it came in like a bright green envelope and it was stamped, and it wasn't franked, it looked more personal. So straight away it creates intrigue. Like if you've got like HMRC and United Utilities on your doorstep, and you've got like a big pink or a big yellow or a big blue or a big green or purple envelope, you're going to gravitate towards the one that looks like a fucking birthday card, like it's got some cash in it.
I might actually, I'd have gone into the paint shop for my envelopes. I might actually buy some coloured ones instead.
Tony, mate, honestly, I swear to God, mate, like getting a colour. So I alternate my colours all the time. So I started off with blue because that was my brand colour. Then I moved to yellow because it was Easter. Then I bought some green ones just because, believe it or not, it's sad this. I bought this jumper that I'm wearing now. I bought this like a couple of days before, and I was like, I'll get some green ones. It matches my new jumper. So I got some green ones. Now I'm on like bright pink ones. So it changes all the time. But the truth, the point is that it stands out for the right reasons. When it hits the door, mate, it creates intrigue. Like rather than if I come back and I've got a letter from HMRC, I'm like, I'll prolong opening it for as long as I can. Whereas if you get something that looks like a birthday card, you're more inclined to open it. There's no difference, I found anyway. There's no difference between a first and second class stamp. So if you're going to stamp it, just save yourself a few pence and second class it. It won't harm.
I'm too much of a cheapskate anyway to get the first class.
Same here, mate. Us Northerners.
I know. Save every penny you can.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, I just don't see it adds up though. So yeah, if you did, if it's 25p difference, if you do 100, that's 25 quid just for an extra day or so. It doesn't matter, does it? So
no, and like I said, if it harms your conversions, then I'd pay the extra 25p, but it doesn't. I think I found whether second class it, if a second class it or hand post it, that there's not really a difference. So if you've got one close by that you want to go and hand deliver, then hand deliver it. It's not going to harm.
Yeah.
If you want to post it, send it second class. Just don't frank it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I have a franking machine anyway, so that's fine. I literally everything I do, I just sign it and then do the envelope and then just put a second class stamp on, and then that's it. Send it off.
Good man. But then the final thing is, mate, like, again, I'll have to join. I'm mindful of time, mate. We've been on for quite a while now. But the other thing that I do with direct mail is I'll always, and I made this pivot just purely because what we said at the top of the call, Tony, there's been fewer on-market opportunities to get in front of than there would be in a pre-COVID market. So I've been targeting off-market properties. Again, it's been super like targeted in terms of I'm genuinely writing, Tony, to customers that own houses that I'm interested in advertising. If someone gets a letter from me, I can guarantee it's in a location or it's at a price point or it's got quirks that have made that property appeal to me. In which case, like I'll write to them. But the off-market letter, the difference is that they've shown no intent, no motivation, no signs that they want to sell. So it's a completely cold audience. So as you can imagine, you need to send more to get the conversions. But I know they go into properties that are priced at a point where it's going to pay me at least like a £10,000 fee. So
when it does come to fruition,
it's worth doing. And with the off-market letters, mate, this is a full fucking Zoom call in itself, so I'm not going to break it down. But with the off-market stuff, I'll always do. It's written more like a news article, so it's written like a press release.
Like markets and stuff.
Yeah, more so than. It's a press release more so than a sales pitch or like a case study or something intrinsically about me. So, for example, the one that we sent last quarter, we was talking about, the whole thing had just happened with Russia and Ukraine. So we was talking about the early signs that that's having on the prices and the activity for unique homes on the Fylde Coast. We was talking about the changes in consumer preferences and behaviour that we're now seeing in the Fylde Coast property market as a result of the ongoing impacts of COVID and what that means for them maximising the sale price of their property. We was touching on what it's likely the market's going to do as interest rates are starting to rise. We're talking about like what impact that might have. This quarter's letter, what's topical now is fuel prices have just gone to a stupid level. So will the rising cost of fuel impact on the value of a unique home in Pulteney Fylde, for example? So again, it's very specific. The language that I'm using, the towns that I'm dropping, the way that I'm referring to the home, the topics that we're choosing on are quite topical. It's all stuff that's going to resonate with the avatar that I'm writing to. So we're sending off market letters, and like I said, mate, you have to send more to get a return, but we did like 40 grand in listing fees last week off market prospecting. And they were people that in some cases, mate, they'd never heard of me. They'd never seen my videos. They've never seen my results. They just got this letter. And one thing that they'll always say is, that's such a coincidence. We was only saying last week, we're going to think about selling. And that's been a great foot in the door. And that for me has always been an untapped market, mate. I've never focused on that demographic, but it just goes to show you, like, and this is the way that I want you to think about it, mate. If you're struggling to get volume out, just know that every property in your market is for sale. Every property is for sale at the right price. Do you know what I mean? So it's always worth starting a conversation where you can.
Yeah, well, my dad said, he said something quite similar to that, really. So, yeah, you're right. I would be interested in going into the off-market kind of stuff. I've never actually done a letter to off-market. So
neither have I. And this is where, like, with the off-market stuff, and I was the same, mate, like, it's not fun sitting at your dining room table, writing out hundreds of envelopes, paying for hundreds of stamps, like folding hundreds of pieces of paper. It's the most mundane task in the world. I mean, to be honest, I could probably do without sourcing it, but obviously at your stage now, you're going to be doing that labour yourself. But it's worth doing, mate. As much as it feels like a thankless job, I've not had any results, I've not got any listings, I've not made any money, I've spent 500 quid on stamps. As much as it feels like this is really shit, like you just got to trust in the process, mate. As long as your content's dialed in and as long as you're consistent, that's pretty much the main ingredients for your direct mail. And it does come good, mate. So I definitely recommend giving it a look. If you were to say to me, Ben, there's 1,000 quid, what should I do with it? That's all the money I've got. I'd be sending you to this as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Once I finish this call, I'm gonna go onto my template letters and just see what I can tweak with it. Really, like I said, take a few days out just to go through each letter, just so then it's really well constructed, and I can do one relevant to each property. So if I can see it's a big property, like there's an estate where my friend lives, and he's been there. Well, his parents have owned it for 20 years, and my mate now he's 25. And his sister's 27, so they'll be moving out soon, I expect. So they're in a 4-bed house. I think they might be looking to go down to a 2-bed or a 3-bed in the next few years. So that's why I've been targeting houses about 20 years old, where I am in 4-bed attaches, because I know that they're going to be, well, maybe coming to the market soon. So I could do some design specifically for that situation.
100%, mate. Or another decent, and that's good, but applying that same proactive mindset, like another thing that could be worth doing is have a look at the properties. Go on Rightmove Plus, pop in the areas that you want to target, and look at the properties that are withdrawn in the first lockdown. So when we went into COVID, and that first 6 months after COVID, where it was like, now the world's melting, like everyone's gonna die. Like we just didn't. It was just so. It's hard to remember now, but you think back to what a scary time that was. And a lot of people just took the houses off the market because they was like, F this, like we're not having strangers coming to our house, no way. And there'd be people out there that haven't relisted, and it's like, wow, you wanted to sell then. We all now know what COVID is. We've accepted it. It's no longer, I mean, still serious, but it's no longer as scary as it was in the eye of the storm. Well, the property market's done this. Like, let's see what we can achieve for you. So that's probably a good market to go for as well, mate. But just the only way, we talk all day about this works and that works. Try this, don't try that. But the only way to know what works for you is to try it, mate. And it's just trial and error. But
trial and error. Yeah.
Just keep pushing forward.
I have done that withdrawal. I'm not doing it. I never thought it from the COVID standpoint, but I've just done properties that have been on the market that I withdrew like last year or 2 years ago. Just using that template, like what was it now? 50% of properties coming back to the market. It's been reduced 2 years ago, something like that. But I could do some design, like say with the COVID kind of thing, see what's actually taken off around.
If you're going specifically for that narrative and that audience, but again, mate, going back to what I said before, the best withdrawal letter I've ever sent has been I was helping a customer. They've been on the market for over 2 years. This happened, that happened. They was upset because of this. They was frustrated because of that. When they came on the market, they was hoping for the best, but wasn't really expecting too much, because that's exactly what their mindset's going to be now. Like, you know what I mean? So it's just like the more value, the more you can make yourself look like an absolute fucking stud through the result that you've achieved for someone else, the more that's going to resonate than you just standing there saying, wow, I'm a massive fucking stud. Do you know what I mean? You are a stud though, Tony. Right. We can all see that.
Nice one.
But mate, look, we've been on for about an hour now, so I'm going to let you get your day back, mate. But look, if you need any help with direct, mate, or anything else, mate, just shoot me a message anytime. Yeah, nice one. Cheers, Ben. Appreciate it. Top man. I'll catch you soon. Cheers. See you in a bit. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.